Okay, hello. Should be live now. I've just been... I got back from work not long ago, actually, because back at work, but also a long day. I came round into the driveway, and I was just thinking to myself, do you know what? If I was Mythic raiding, I'd be getting back now thinking, bloody hell, how many world quests can I get done before I stream in? And then I'd need to make sure I get the rest of them done afterwards, but I don't have to do any of that. But I was looking through the news. Blizzard have been posting a few interesting things, actually. One of the more interesting about the auction house, I thought, was particularly funny. It says, one thing we've identified as particularly troublesome is a large volume of trade skill materials being auctioned off in stacks of one. No shit. But they have a plan for it. Hi, everyone. They have a plan for it. They're going, at the moment... Now, it's not as good as the plan someone told me they were thinking about. But I suppose that will take longer to implement, even if they do decide to do it. What they're going to do, for those who don't know, is increase the deposit if you put multiple stacks on. So, you know, if you want to put on 200 stacks of one, it's going to cost you a lot more than just sticking it on as one stack of 200. How long have we been going so far? Not at all. That was the very first thing I said, Devon. Very first thing tonight. Only just come on. I'm actually sort of in the middle of I'm just clicking through. What am I clicking through? I'm just clicking through to trying to read stuff that they're up against. But yeah. What else was there? There was some other bits and pieces of news as well. Hang on, let me find it. Because there were quite a few little interesting things. Something... Hold on, what else? They stole our AP? What? Who stole what? What? What's been stolen from where? Oh yeah, there was a world quest exploit. Someone actually told me about this. They said, we are also taking action against those who are abusing it. But, you know, it's one of those things where usually they might take action against some, but it's a tricky one to note. Oh, the Azshara. Well, it was the best by virtue of the fact that I have nothing really to complain about. There was a little bit of a wobble, I thought, you know, when she was doing the saving her people thing, and then that particular scene, you know, the people blaming her and all that lot. And I thought, oh no, are they going to retcon this to be a morally grey person? But not a bit of it. She is shown to be haughty and vain, and you know, she considers her own people to be her playthings. So, you know, and they showed all that as well. So hi Barry and Vril. So yeah, it was a very good warbringer. They're all good cinematically. It's just that the other ones, oh no, Jaina didn't really do anything, I didn't think. The Sylvanas one was just, you know, I've already gone through that enough times. But the Azshara one was, it just showed as she was, you know, that's exactly the impression we've had of Azshara. It didn't like contradict anything. So yeah. The artifact knowledge system, but takes AP away. Yes, that's correct. They sometimes pull fast ones with the emissaries, though, because there were a few times in Legion where they didn't want people saving things up, and they sometimes screwed you over if you did. But then also, there were times when they said, oh no, we're going to screw you over if you do, and then they didn't. I remember the most famous example of that was when Broken Shore was populated. And they said, oh no, wait, oh no, what was it? Was it around about that time when there were new legendaries being added? And they said, yeah, but you can't get legendaries from these things, from the vendor on the Broken Shore. So it must have been after Broken Shore was populated. And then a load of people, you know, turned stuff in anyway and got a load of legendaries. So it turned out to be a bit of a lie. Yes. I don't hate all races that are short. I'm absolutely fine with Goblin. I don't know where this vicious rumour comes from. I am absolutely fine with Goblins and Dwarves. No issue at all. Thank you, Nelson. But any fight in Uldir I'm looking forward to? Well, let's go through them. I mean, depends on how you do them with some of them as well. The first one, no. I don't even know in what capacity I'm going to be doing them. Mother's quite a nice fight, but I don't fancy it in a pug. That's the problem with it. And ultimately, if I'm going to be doing it, I'm likely to be doing it in a pug. The first one is also going to be messy in a pug. It's a messy fight, unless you're sort of disciplined and decide, you know, it's grobulous tactics with what you need to be doing, which is place your shit on the left of the boss. Then when everyone's placed their shit, move the boss so there's another little place for people to put their shit. And keep doing that. And then when it does his charge, the tanks make sure he charges into the biggest pile of shit. That's how it needs to be done. But that's just not how it's going to be done by most people. So, messy. But at least it's the first boss, I suppose. Mother's a nice fight, but again, I can see it in a pug, it turning into a nightmare. The dogs thing, that should be fine. The doggy thing, boring fight, but that should be fine. Can't remember which order that lots of things go in now. The Vectus, I think it is going to be, I don't know, it was an arsehole in testing. Probably is going to be again. The big bug boss, Veclaw, I think it's called. The Herald of something. That should be okay, I think. I think there'll be missteps in the pugs, but I think it'll be okay. I don't think it's that bad. Unless, of course, someone doesn't run out with their shit. I'll just use the word shit for any mechanic I can't remember the name of, and I can't remember the name of any of them at the moment. So, I mean, most of the fights will be okay. It's just no fight's good in a pug. What's the point of making one continent Azeroth, Horde, and one continent Alliance? I don't know. But I'm interested to find out. There's obviously a reason for it. There's a clear reason why they want one red continent and one blue one. But I don't know what the reason is. They've got something planned. You know, they've obviously got something planned. We'll be alright with that one, I think. What are my thoughts on the mythic only dungeon like King's Rest and Siege of Bralis? I haven't done Siege of Bralis yet. My rep is not good enough. And it may not be good enough this week again. But King's Rest I thought was quite nice. I had a little bit of a misstep there myself when the second boss kept picking on me to put in the sarcophagus. Like literally every time it was me. And the first time during the fight when I got thrown in, because the trash was doing it to me, but on the boss when he did it to me, I didn't realise the knocking thing, even though they were trying to tell me, but I didn't see it. Now either I was just being blind, which is possible, I haven't checked back the footage to see, or it didn't appear for some UI error or something. But then, so we wiped, because they basically just tried to find me randomly and picked the last one. Which, you know, and then the trash just killed, the ads just killed everyone. But then the second time it was much easier because, oh yeah, the button's there to knock. So, but yeah, I thought it was all right, King's Rest. I quite liked King's Rest. Apart from the last boss, morning, George. The last boss was so awful with just the ground effects everywhere that as melee you're just thinking, I want to get back into combat. So I eventually, towards the end of the fight, just bubbled and said, all right, I'm standing in this for 8 seconds and just hitting it. Wasn't Veclaw one of the twin Emps? It might have been. Yeah, maybe it was. It's something. It's something. It's a bug. It's a big bug. I can't remember what it's called in Uldir. Hi, Reb Ma. Hi, Wormtongue as well. So, how do I justify being a dirty horde when I don't need to be a Mythic Guild anymore? I'm a spy. I'm bringing down the system from the inside. I'm spreading dissent. Why does YouTube ask for permission to show content with bad language? Because that's the way it is. It all started... Well, I don't know when it all started, but I suspect it all started with all this adpocalypse. So now, because there used to be on the tabs, like for the normal videos, your comments tab, you've got all your comments, and then there's 2 other tabs, which I almost never check, by the way. They're both of them got over 200 things in that I ain't dealt with, and I'm probably never going to deal with them. One of them is suspected spam. That might include someone just doing something silly like putting a link in or something. That will unfortunately go into there. But the other one, which didn't used to be there, is inappropriate content. And that usually is the one where swear words going and stuff like that. So the reason why they're doing it on a live thing, it's a bit like them saying, you can allow it if you want, but we might demonetize you if if the algorithm decides it's a bit too naughty. So it's best avoided. But that's why it's given me the choice. The problem is what YouTube doesn't know is that it makes no difference because it might hide it from the comments down the side, but it's appearing on here because whatever I see is showing up on the screen for people who are watching on mobile and tablets maybe that wouldn't get the comments down the side on the YouTube thing. So that's why it's not that YouTube is showing the comments as far as I know. It's that I am on the screen because I've got the YouTube chat viewer. So, do I think that some bosses just have a hate for Ret Paladins? No, I think they have a hate for melee in general. I don't think there's anything specifically against Ret Paladins in there. Anything that's nasty for Rets is nasty for not all of the melee. It depends. Like Death Knights get a relatively easy ride on the first boss because when you get the debuff for the dropping the puddles, you can AMS it off. And although if you get spammed with it, you won't be able to do every one, but that'd be unlucky. So realistically, you can do every one. I mean, Paladins can bubble one if you get a really bad one. So no, I don't think it's that bad for Paladins. It's just bad for everyone that's melee in those situations. But there are a lot of melee hating mechanics in it. You do some sims between DP and Inquisition. Yeah, they're supposed to. I mean, obviously it depends on your setup and everything, and like what you're going to be doing on the fight. The problem with Divine Purpose, I'm not going to do too many Ret things, but the problem with Divine Purpose is it's unreliable. So over the course of a fight, yes, it's fine. But if you have very short, important burst windows with ads, it's going to let you down. Sometimes it'll be amazing and you'll blow it up, but then other times it'll let you down. You need to be consistent. So I would never use it if you had to have consistent, like burst. Blimey, it's coming thick and fast today. What video should you watch to understand why I've gone casual? I don't know. I've talked about it mostly in live stuff, I think. Oh yeah, no, I've got the Old Man Rambling series. Yeah, watch that. It lasts for several hours though, but it gets the general idea across. Although when I started the series, I was still going to be doing Mythic raiding, so it's sort of evolved. YouTube videos having 2 ads now is... oh, I don't really know. I'll tell you what annoys me, though, because I've been doing Warhammer recently, so I've been watching loads and loads of battle reports, and there's a particular channel, they all do it to a certain extent. There's one I was watching yesterday, and it's basically, there was an advert every 7 bloody minutes. Oh, that's just tedious. Like, I put one for this, for people who's watching this on YouTube later, I put one in the middle of it, like an hour in, and you can cope with 1 an hour. Most people will have stopped watching it by then anyway. But yeah, every 7 minutes on it. Oh my god. So obnoxious. There's no need for it. I wouldn't have minded so much as well if they'd have arranged for it to have arrived during the battle turns, not mid-sentence or something like that. With a natural pause in it. A few swear. YouTube doesn't have a problem. I mean, ultimately, it's not YouTube that's got the problem. It's advertisers. Advertisers haven't got the problem with a bit of like light swearing, as long as it's not anything too horrendous. You get away with a little bit. Slip the odd one out. Nothing you wouldn't say in front of the Queen. Horde are worse than gnomes? No. They're fine. They don't have gnomes, at least. They're just boring. That's my problem with Horde. It's actually quite ironic. A lot of people call Alliance boring. And I understand why. I talked about that, I think, maybe in the mailbox. I totally understand why. But I personally find Horde boring. But what a lot of people, I mean, ultimately the reason I played Alliance, was for the much simpler reason that I preferred archers to spearmen. I mean, that's what needs to be remembered. And then, of course, only Alliance could be paladins. But the thing is, in the modern game, I can be a paladin on Horde or Alliance, and there's no such thing as spearmen. So, You know, I don't have to worry about that either. That's the point, actually. We've got archers in the form of hunters. We have... That's it! That's it! For the next class. We need a... No, if we're going to have any more classes, we need a ranged class. Spearman! That's Mythic right in the first game. It's staring me right in the face. Chucking spears. There they go, sorted. We've got it. Someone tell Blizzard. Dwarfs actually, Dark Iron Dwarfs are looking quite nice. Dwarfs in general. I don't understand really how Dwarfs are looking so good, but they are. Any other Ret Paladin should watch? I don't know any that you can watch, but obviously, I mean, just go to Discord and ask questions there, because that's where all the ones who know what they're talking about are. Really, date stamps on my videos. What do you mean date stamps? Don't they have, date stamps? Or when it's published, anyway. Subscriber reports. Well, it tells you what date they were published. That's close enough, isn't it? The only reason I put the date on for the subscriber reports is so that I know which was which. Alliance aren't boring. Well, no, I think the reason why it can be considered boring with Alliance is because the Alliance are exactly like a faction in every other fantasy series of books or films or games or whatever. It's that the way I describe it is benevolent autocracy. And that's what the Alliance is. And that's what they're all like. Every single race within the Alliance is like that. Whereas the Horde is much more of a mix. You've got that much more tribal element. And I would say the Horde cultures are more unique to Warcraft. They're not always... you know, you can't just say, oh yeah, that's just pulled out of like Lord of the Rings or Warhammer or Game of Thrones or whatever the hell. Whereas the Alliance is, you can look at the Alliance and you can go, yeah, that's exactly like Gondor, and that's exactly like, you know, this, that and the other. Necromancer from D3 coming to WoW. Well, maybe, as long as it's ranged, it doesn't, like, I don't think they should bring more classes in anyway. We already have 12 classes for 20 raid spots in Mythic and multiple roles as well, causing endless problems. So even having a ranged only class would still be bad. But if they're going to have a new class, got to be ranged. And it's got to be ranged only. Not even the possibility of being melee, because then you create a situation is what if in a particular patch the melee spec is the stronger of the specs and you just create another melee. Paladin a dual wielding. Oh, dual wielding shield spec. What? Well, shield in each hand. How's that work? Like Captain America on crack. No. Dual wielding though. But a range spec for paladins I'm totally on board with. I'm fine with Shockerdin, a proper Shockerdin. A spear class with nets and pots. So you could do CC. Yeah, but Blizzard aren't really into the support class. They don't do support classes in WoW. No, it just have to be a DPS. Chucking spears. Has to chuck spears. But it could have different types of spear. It could be like, you know, Judge Dredd, but with spears. Different versions. Explosive ones and thingy ones. And ones that it can chuck and like harpoon itself, like Survival Hunter, I suppose. Basically, Survival Hunter, but ranged. Actually, that's probably why it won't work. People will just say it's a ranged Survival Hunter. Dual shields from Dark Souls, really? I can't even picture that. That's just mad. You want to see a Demon Hunter range build? I want to see a Demon Hunter range build. I don't think... I don't understand why they would not have done that. When is the first Azerite level adjustment? It's now. It is this week. No, it's only live, obviously, in North America, if you're on North American realms. Well, they've said it's live. I assume it is. But yeah, tomorrow for EU. Have I seen the end cinematic from the Ally Unity quest? Maybe not then. Oh yeah, that no, I've heard about that, Red. I haven't seen it yet. No, it's not appeared on. I haven't gone searching for it. It's not appeared on World of Warcraft's thing, or at least it hadn't before today. The last Alliance cinematic I've seen is the one where Jaina summons her brother's fleet. I'm still not quite sure how that's supposed to work, because I thought that Tancred was... I mean, I thought the way we left it in Warcraft 2 was he was in charge of Kulturas. But I don't know. I don't know what all that was about. Didn't notice any change on N8. Well, it is there apparently. They've said it's gone live. I imagine there would have been an awful lot of people replying that no, it hasn't if it hadn't. So it is there. Remember, the way it's supposed to work is it just reduces the amount you need to get your next level. So your bar will still look the same. You just don't need as much Azerite. Or artifact power, sorry. Behave. Small to medium shields. What you mean? Bucklers. With sharpened edges and points. I'd have had the... to be perfectly honest with you, I'd have had the ranged demon hunter be another bow class. Not only if they were going to do forced personal loot anyway, would it help out hunters, they'd help each other out, because there'd be another class that uses their bloody weapon. There was a very nice looking bow that dropped off Illidan, Black Bow of the Betrayer, so there's that link there. And, you know, I would see them as being very similar to Dark Rangers, Sylvanas' Dark Rangers. I can totally see that. Not undead. Well, you can have an undead version of it, I suppose. Outlaw should have been a range spec. What, dual wielding pistols? Well, I mean, we talked about this quite a while ago. Some people may remember. You know, if they gave every class a range spec, then a lot of these problems would go away because people would have the option. Now, a lot of people wouldn't want to do it, and fair enough. So, for example, feral druids don't always fancy going boomkin, and enhancement shamans don't always fancy going elemental. Fine. But the option would be there for those that are happy. I mean, I would play a ranged spec on fights where ranged are needed if Paladin had a ranged spec. Probably minor changes. Yeah, I think it'd be fairly minor to begin with. You know, they don't want you suddenly... You know, they don't want people who've spent a couple of weeks building up a bit of a lead suddenly to have it wiped out. They just don't want them getting too far ahead compared to us lazy bastards that only do a few world quests now and then. Rogues had bucklers in very early WoW. Yes, I vaguely remember that. Something like that, yes. Did Shamans have taunts? I don't remember. I do remember it saying on the website, it described Shamans as being a tanking class, and they had something rock badge or something that generated extra threat. I don't remember them having a taunt, but obviously I didn't play a Shaman, so I don't know. I didn't play Horde. What if the spear throws were warrior spec? No, I think if warriors are going to chuck something, it should be axes. You know, that was my idea for a ranged warrior spec, throwing axes. You know, big old Viking chucking axes. Sub as a shadow caster pirate with single shot. No. Yeah, but they're not going to... I don't know. What was the flood about in the Azshara Warbringer video? That was so basically, this was the maelstrom. Was her. That was her doing. She split the world with her naughty magics. So that was basically that, and flooded her own people. You know, they all got submerged into the sea. Old gods turned them into Naga. So yes, so it was being greedy with the magic and not being able to control it. And that's, you know, that is now the maelstrom, sort of. Oh, hello, phone's going off. Rock biter generated threat, yeah. Frost shock had high threat, did it? Okay. Should have written down your Azerite requirements. I mean, I don't think Blizzard have lied, and I think if they had, some people would have definitively noticed. So, but it may not be much. It may not be that much. An Earth-based Shaman spec. You know, that would just make it a tank, wouldn't it? I think there's enough tanking classes. The portal collapsing. Yeah, well, this is what they were doing. They couldn't control them magic, the summoning. So it just went. How do I pick my mailbox questions? So I go down the comments and pick out interesting ones until I've got about 10. Truth be told. This week, it took quite a while because I had to filter through all the nearly... Oh, God, I'm going to check again, actually. I need to check again. Hold on, let me just check something. Because there's that ridiculous video that ended up getting a stupid number of views, which has 870 comments in it, which is just unreasonable. So that's basically what I do. What feasible new kind of spellcaster? There were... Was it called a Necromancer in Warcraft? I don't think it was called... But it did the same job, didn't it? As an orc, you had... It was called a Necromancer, wasn't it? And you could, like, oh, bones, I'll turn that into a thing, a skeleton, basically. So it was in there. So, yeah, they could have Necromancers. But then the problem is people will see elements of them in DKs. The big issue is that a lot of the there's too many classes in WoW. And because they try and make all the specs super different, which I'm totally against, they've pretty much used up all the fantasy ideas, archetypes for classes in the classes we have now. It's super difficult to think of anything significantly different. Does anyone feel like the higher level they get, the less haste you have? Oh, well, that's true. Well, the problem with that is, it's certainly true of me, because as soon as I hit level cap, I worked on my blacksmithing and I crafted myself a load of crit haste gear. So basically, almost everything had crit haste in it. The downside to that is that when you start upgrading it with stuff you're getting from dungeons, you know, not everything can have haste on it. So you end up going down in haste. So I've gone down in haste. But, you know, when people were talking about the mob scaling, them having more difficulty as they got more gear, I've found the opposite. And I know, like, I had to concede a point that because I'm a paladin, I won't notice difficulties in world content as much as others, because they're very good, probably the best solo class, or one of the best anyway. Nonetheless, I've still felt it's got easier as my eye level has gone up. And obviously you do know, because you're killing the same mobs doing the same world quests. As undead spellcaster could cast... Yeah, but I think it was still called a Necromancer. I think the actual name of it was still called a Necromancer. You made them at the temple, didn't you? If I remember correctly. Anyway. But yeah, I just think it's too difficult to think of genuinely new classes. I think there's too many classes anyway. There should just... I don't know. What possible threats are there left if we kill N'Zoth? None. This is exactly the point. I think that they've got rid of the Legion, and I think that they want to get rid of old gods this expansion, and I think they want to do something different with World of Warcraft. I think they actually, drum roll, want to do their own story. So I think they're gearing up. I think they're having the Horde continent and Alliance continent, getting rid of the Legion, getting rid of old gods, which hasn't been confirmed, but I think they're going to do that. I think this is all about doing something radically different with the story of World of Warcraft. Potentially risky, but I think it's well worth it, because I'm sick of the fact that World of Warcraft has been at the top of its game for way longer than the Warcraft RTSs, and yet it seems to just want to keep regurgitating the same stories. And people seem to like that as well. I don't know why. Warcraft 3 didn't regurgitate Warcraft 2 stories. It did its own new ones. I don't understand why World of Warcraft couldn't do its own new ones. Raise the skeletons that just march at the enemy. Be a bit boring for the player though, wouldn't it? I mean, it's bad enough having one pet sometimes. God, imagine having 10 of them. Imagine what everyone else is going to feel as well as 10 pets emerge from them. Imagine the abuse, and quite rightly so, that warlocks get when they suddenly summon a load of imps. 5% haste. Wow. All right. Okay. It's not that bad for me, at least. Although it was on the beta, I had a paladin who was at 4% haste for ages. Then it went to 6. Mine's 9. No, mine's back up to 10 actually at the moment. Naaru main boss next expansion, maybe. Again, you've got to ask yourself a question. Like some of the stuff that happened in Legion that wasn't directly related to the Legion story. You know, Xera doing what Xera did to Illidan. That was totally unexpected and wasn't a necessary part of the story. It's the same with Illyria. Getting trained in the use of the Void. That was not anything to do with the Legion storyline. Therefore, it's sowing the seeds for something later. So I can absolutely see some exploration of, you know, the fact that even though they've said in the Warcraft Chronicles that the Naaru are benevolent, the fact that they're only benevolent when it suits them, or at least Xera. Okay, we've only had Xera so far who's behaved like that. Again, I think it's saving something up for the future. WoW does have new stories. Yeah, the Pandaria. Yeah, I will give you that. Mr. Pandaria was new, but the problem was, what happened? People moaned about Kung Fu Panda, and then what happened the very next expansion? It was like, okay, you didn't like new stuff, so we're going to give you all the old stuff. Oh, half of them are dead. Never mind, we're going to go back in time and into an alternate universe. Absolute horseshit. They just went completely back to Warcraft 1, 2 stuff, which effectively is what they're doing in BfA. You'd rather see new specs for current classes. Oh no. Do you want any specs as well? Unless it's new roles for classes. As I say, I don't mind melee classes getting new ranged specs. And just give everyone a tank and a healing and a DPS spec. Do that. If they want, they can give everyone a tank and a healing, a melee DPS and a ranged DPS spec. Give every class 4 specs, but covering the 4 different roles. Fine, people can play what they like and choose whichever role is most suitable, no problem. Or whichever role they want to play at any rate, I should say. But Samdi does tell you that he thinks you're following the wrong light. Yeah, he would do, wouldn't he? I don't think Brun Samdi is entirely trustworthy, if just between you and me. The Alliance campaign is exploring a lot of old themes. You don't think the same could be said of the Horde? I don't know. I don't know. I think the Horde one is just... It seems to have most forward direction because it's moving towards... That's the one that's most directly related to the old gods at the moment. Obviously, there's a strong old gods or suspicion with the Alliance stuff, but at the moment, it's very overt, the old gods link with the Horde storyline. That's all I think. You wonder if Zira knew that her destruction was part of Illidan's path. Again, I think that's just trying to look for excuses to give. I think if that would have been the case, we probably would have discovered that in Legion. But I don't think it was the case. I think that the Naaru, I think again, it's like I said at the time. I think it's straight out of Babylon 5. I think it's directly that. I think the Naaru might be. What's wrong with this light? The Naaru might be less inclined to enslave people, but nonetheless, we're still their pawns, just like we are for the Void. You know, they have a cosmic goal to achieve. They just happen to believe that you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. That's all. Let's see what am I missing. They haven't given us a new talent since 100. Yeah, they're not going to. They've given us Azerite traits. That's what they've given us. The way the talent system works now, that doesn't work. You know, they can't give us talents like that. Well, I suppose they could. I suppose they could have done another row of, say, passive abilities that do something. But they don't want to. Evening, Jordan. Warlocks used to have Firestone. Yes. Oh, well, I remember Firestone. I don't remember what it did, though. It was some sort of buff. BM hunters can be tanks. I mean, I remember in Naxxramas you would use a hunter's pet to sort of tank a Nubrican. Is it a Nubrican? Pretty sure it was. Around when you had to move him around the room. But I don't think in general. Because I did sometimes think, well, maybe if they made a Warlock tank spec, maybe Demonology would be the one to use. But again, I'm not sure about tanking by proxy with a pet. Well, the reason why secondaries got smashed, I suppose, a little bit. Obviously, you don't get any secondaries on your Azerite gear. There was supposed to have been compensated because we just get only secondaries on our artifact. But at the same time, yeah, there has... Obviously, if you rely on lots of haste just to make a spec comfortable, not power, because you can do lots of damage without the haste. It just doesn't feel comfortable sometimes. Naaru could be the Vorlons. Well, that's exactly how I view it. That's exactly how I view it. And possibly we would want the, just like we'd maybe want, you know, the Naaru to win just because they're a bit nicer to us, but plus I suppose the fact that the Void ultimately want to destroy the whole universe, whereas the light side of it is quite happy to share, well, sort of happy to share. Maybe they will revamp the talent system next expansion. Maybe. I wouldn't pin your hopes on it, but maybe. I mean, at some point they probably will. But I can't see it being done unless there's a massive shake-up of the development team. And given that we had a significant shake of the development team for Legion, and it didn't result in a change in the talent system, I very much doubt that we're going to see one. Ah, well, you say hunters should only be used to kite bosses and skin core hounds. We had a mage skinning our core hounds. Guild Hours in Immortan Core. He's the one who had the special gloves. Firestone took your offhand slot and gave plus 5 spell damage. And added 5 damage to melee attacks, did you? Okay. I vaguely remember it being a thing, but not what it did. We don't have a bard spec. We really don't need a bard spec. No, WoW will not do a support, but it doesn't feel... It's not exactly Holy Trinity anymore, because there is now a significant difference in the experience of a ranged DPS and a melee DPS. So I would consider those in Warcraft to be two very different roles. But you still have those 4 roles and none of them are support. Am I also... What, me? Am I a vegan? Good God, no. Secondary stats are boring. Well, it depends what class you play. They have a very significant... Haste has a super significant effect on well, Ret Paladins, definitely. Well, versatility, you've only left out versatility there as not having any change. Because, yes, Haste, Crit and Mastery can have significant changes depending on your class and spec. Versatility doesn't, but versatility is not supposed to. That's the point of versatility, is it's there to get... It works in tandem with the Vantage Runes beautifully, I think. But by giving you just the straight-up flat outputs and defensive, and then coming up with a Vantage Rune that says you can choose which boss you want to have that little bit extra on, and it just gives you flat versatility. I think versatility spec works. The stat works quite well. Of course, it's boring. It's supposed to be boring. That's how it works. You wish they'd add racial flavors to spells. Well, they used to. Oh well, I say they used to. Not so much racial flavors to them, but like the different priest races had different spells in vanilla. Well, the only decent one was a dwarf one. Oh, I see, okay. I mean, the very idea I'd be vegan, Christ. How is the casual life treating me at the moment? Very well. Very well. Nice and relaxed. Surprisingly so, in fact. It's going to be needed because I am going to be getting ready for a load of crap at work that I'm going to have to deal with. Most classes have no special interaction with Mastery or Crit. Well, no, but I mean, some do. And for those that don't, you just get whichever ones are just going to make you stronger. But you will, I think most classes and specs get some interaction from one of them at least. Again, I think it's too difficult to have all of them giving you some major interaction. Because there would lie ruin, because you'd have massive balancing problems then. That's the issue there. I was trying to find something else interesting that Blizzard said. I can't find it. I don't know. No, I don't think Haste is the only stat that affects the way a spec feels to play. Because for this, I'm sure for some of them, Mastery and Crit does for some as well. Crit used to a lot for Warriors, didn't it? Before that changed. There was a time when a Warrior would start out... There was a spec of Mage as well. Maybe Fire? Can't remember. They would start out absolutely awful, dreadful. But by the end of the expansion, they were massively overpowered. Because they had certain things that procced from Crit. And it just hardly ever procced at the start of the expansion. At the end of the expansion, it was proccing like crazy all the time. And you're just massively overpowered. Haste shouldn't affect the GCD. No, I think Haste needs to affect the GCD. Obviously, there is a cap on it. So, where was I? Crit only does with fire. It may have been Fire Mage, but I mean, I'm remembering from some years ago. You know, Warriors have a different. In fact, Warriors want to nick my Haste now. I think, don't they? Don't they prefer Haste now? Monster Hunter World has a bard-like spec. I think Monk, where you do combos at the end, would be a short buff. Yeah, I mean, but like WoW doesn't do that. That's the thing. It's a very different game. It's more of an old-fashioned game. I mean, this is why I would quite like them to do a World of Warcraft 2. That'd be great, with more modern ideas. But I just don't see it, at least in any time soon. Yeah, Warriors want Haste. This is the reason why a particular warrior tried to justify his choice of Gnome last expansion, because of some magical haste he wanted to achieve. Fortunately, it was beaten out of him. Although he said he only changed from Gnome because he'd got that amount of haste now. Well, you see, it depends what you mean by classes having a haste number 1. Like, it'll change. I imagine it should be the same for a few more specs at least. I know it wasn't always the same. But for Ret Paladins, the different secondary stats are not that far away from each other, so they can change places quite a lot. Like, at the moment, haste is not my strongest for either single target or AoE, but that's because I have what I laughably call a reasonable amount. It's 10%. I wouldn't have called that a reasonable amount in Legion. But at the same time, it was a reasonable amount in WoD, so, you know. I haven't had to use Inquisition, though. I am using Divine Purpose at the moment. Mostly because all I'm doing is either doing dungeons or going around world quests. I think I would prefer Inquisition for raiding, though. Once 8.2 rolls around, you'll have enough haste to feel good. You think so? I'm not so sure. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how it is. I'm not so sure. How can they fix some specs feeling awful with levelling all early cap gear? I don't realistically think they can without doing what Blizzard try and avoid. Like, for example, when it comes to secondary stats, if they just went from 4 secondary stats down to, say, 2 or even 1, or maybe they just went down to, like, let's say haste and crits, just for the sake of argument, a lot of people would feel that their classes had got more, you know, boring or homogenized as a result of it. I mean, I think it causes balancing problems when you've got multiple secondary stats. It's much easier to balance if you don't. But I think the reason they persist with them is because there would be this feeling of more homogenization if they didn't. And it's the same with the specs thing. I don't even think it's a problem they should worry too much about. Like, at this precise moment in time, people might be a little bit annoyed about it, but it passes, and it passes for everyone from very casual to super hardcore. It doesn't last that long. So I don't really see it as being a big problem that they should worry about. You think they should put offensive abilities on their own global cooldown? Well, I don't think they should have defensive abilities on the global cooldown at all, because there's no reason for it. The reason the global cooldown even exists is just to stop you smashing a load of things at once. We don't do that with defensives. In fact, I saw a comment, actually, someone saying that they don't think defensive should be off the global cooldown because you never have to use a defensive reactively, which is like madness. It's like you always have to use it reactively. In fact, I still remember, and it's going back some years now, I still remember the first time we killed Gruul on Mythic in Blackrock Foundry. You know, we killed him in Berserk. He went Berserk. He turned round to eat me. And he killed me. I could clearly see on the playback on the video depressing my bubble button, but global cooldown, so it didn't fire off in time. Super annoying, especially for a spec that has this rapid fire rotation. When you've got a rapid fire rotation, you are very, very likely to get globaled when you need to use something else. I remember in MOP when even Interrupt was on the global cooldown. That caused problems on Horde. Massive problems. Before a recent hotfix, Arms Warriors would actually trash 20 item level upgrade if they had Mastery. Well, yeah, I mean, again, the start of Legion coming to trading, loot trading, I did a Mythic, or Mythic Plus probably, something like that. And I got a really high item level Mastery ring. I can't remember what else it had on it. It was from Eye of Azshara, and it was no good for me. But there was a warrior in the group who would have absolutely loved it, but I couldn't trade it because it was higher item level than what I had. Quite a bit as well. That was about a 20 item level upgrade or something. On your resto Shaman, your throughput cooldown, global cooldown feels awful. Well, throughput ones need to be on the global cooldown. It's just, It's just like defensives, movement speed, that sort of thing. Personal stuff like that. There's no need for it. Do I think the next expansion will remove all secondary stats? And no. Again, I think they desperately want to keep secondary stats, and I think they desperately want to keep the number that they've got of them. Because they want that interest in the game. As soon as you even reduce the number of stats that there are, you're massively reducing the effective number of items you've got. And this is a very loot-driven game. Plus, like I just said, it makes it... people will feel it's all a bit more homogenous. But will they rework stats at anyone? Well, yeah, they'll rework stats because they've done that every few years. You know, sometimes they try something out and it lasts a couple of expansions and it goes again, like armor penetration. I mean, in fact, what was it? Multi-strike only lasted one expansion, didn't it? Was that only in WoD? Wasn't in MOP, was it? I can't remember now. But, you know, they've brought stats in before and then removed them. And so, of course, they could absolutely rework stats. In terms of an entirely new system, again, who knows? I don't know what's, you know, they possibly could. There are a few things I do feel that are completely non-negotiable when it comes to changing aspects of the game. But I don't think stats or the way that they work is one of them. I think they're quite happy to change that if they think they've come up with a better idea. There's no reason for healer throughput CDs to be on the global. I don't know. I think there can be. Overall, the gameplay is at snail's pace. Well, I won't say it was that bad. I mean, it's supposed to be slower than in Legion. They did make that deliberate point. I don't think it's necessarily that bad. It's noticeable. I think that's all I would put it at. It is noticeable. No, can't find that post I was looking for. You're going to King's Rest. Oh, Witch's Cut of Death. I actually got a couple of items in King's Rest, including the sword off the last boss. Was it a sword? It was a weapon anyway. Which was quite a nice one, but I gave it to the warrior there because I already had, it was only a 340. And I already had the 350 axe from the auction house. You're playing Outlaw slower, but you like where it's at. I haven't tried that for ages. I haven't really played my Rogue for a while. Nowhere near as slow as TBC. Well, quite. I can't remember Wrath too much because I quit for most of that. But yes, I still have videos of TBC stuff. I can watch my Illidan video or something like that to watch how that was just basically, yeah, that was just standing there until it was time to judge again. Pretty much. There wasn't much else to be done. Surely a given for any WoW 2 is a console release. You would think so, yes. You would expect so. Is there a trick to getting weapons? Yes, you have to wear pickled onions in your socks. That's how you get weapon drops. The sword from King's Rest is worth plus 10 item levels over any other weapon. Yeah, but I had plus 10 item levels. And it had haste on it, the one I had. Is King's Rest the best dungeon? I don't know. There's a few others I quite like. I quite like Underrot. Don't mind that. Attal Desire, is that the one I'm thinking of? The pyramidy one with a Yasma at the end of it. That's quite a nice one. But I did that a lot on the beta as well. There's a few nice ones. Freehold does my head in. It's just too you know, it's all theme and it's not really that much fun. You know, what's the other one that's really horrible? Motherload. Oh god, nightmares about Motherload. In fact, now that I'm a casual and don't really have to care about anything, the biggest disappointment I can ever experience in game is if I'm doing Mythic pluses, if 1 week I open my cache and there's a Motherload key in there. Oh, just to think about it. Oh my god. You've done King's Rest since launch. I've never seen the cut. Oh. The many things people might miss from TBC, I'm sure class design isn't one of it. Certainly not for me. The amount of messing about and tinkering they did with Ret Paladins over the course of that expansion was mindless. Absolutely ridiculous, some of the things they did. First time jumping into WoW since vanilla. Where do you recommend to get caught up on stats, rotations, mechanics? Your friendly class Discord. Try and find the class Discord. Wowhead is also a very useful site. In fact, Wowhead actually did a series on getting people caught up if they were returning players from various expansions, to give you the lowdown on what has ultimately changed. Motherload was fine until you realise the pig was... Don't you mean... What, Freehold I think has the pig. Motherload is the god-awful Goblin one. Where it's... Well, it's the trash that's god-awful, not so much the bosses. The Goblin Disco was not neat. No. All it did was give you the motivation to want to kill more of them. There's quite enough trash as it is. I miss doing Scholar and Strat every week. I miss doing Scholar. Scholar was my favourite dungeon ever, either from then or since. And I was distraught when they destroyed it. Absolutely distraught. I do not understand why they had to remove it. Should have left it in there. If they wanted to do an updated version of it, which was a load of rubbish anyway, then fine, but run different entrance to the place. Just like they did with Karazhan. They didn't get rid of Karazhan, we notice. You know, they didn't dare get rid of the old Karazhan. They just put a new entrance in for the new rubbish Karazhan dungeon. And they're never an improvement either when they do these things. Upper Blackrock Spire is rubbish compared to the old Upper Blackrock Spire. Scholarmance is rubbish compared to the original Scholarmance. And Karazhan is rubbish compared to the original Karazhan. Anyone completed Pathfinder Part 1 yet? I know there's some people in my guild have. It will be some time before I have. But it doesn't matter, it's some time before you need to be. You hate that one because goblins to you are what gnomes are to... I don't know what goblins... What's the problem with goblins? I like goblins. They sell you useful things. Turn Scholar into... Well, I don't know what they did with Scholarmance. It was awful. It used to be really nice. And I still have the item to summon the Black Knight in the ossuary. But you can't get in there anymore. It's gone. Should bring it back. What was the cause of the huge drop in the price of the WoW token? I don't know. I really, honestly do not know. You know, I was wondering if maybe buying the expansion gives you a month's free subscription or something. I don't... Apparently not. I suggested that and said no. So I really don't know why the WoW token has plummeted in value. It's not good for me, who's only got 100k on the server. I'm not paying an amount of money to get like 190k gold that a couple of weeks ago would have got me 350k gold. people bought tokens to buy the 5 million mount. I suppose that's possible, yeah. I guess... Yes, I suppose that would account for it. That would be possible. I don't know how many people have actually bought it, though, because I'm not sure that that would have affected the economy that much. You would have needed to have paid... How much would you need? Even for... Even not the... Let's say it was 400k gold. It was always a bit under, but let's say about 400k gold. You would still need to spend the equivalent of about 200 quid just to get a mount. There might be some people would do that. There's not that many. So I don't know. I don't think that... In theory, it would, is the sort of thing that might cause it. I seriously don't think there'd be that many people spending 200 quid on a mount. No Mythic Plus boost, no mount boost, and returning players needing goal up in the supply of tokens. Possibly, it might be. 200 quid is cheap for a mount. No, it's not. How is £200 cheap for anything that you don't actually need? Oh, I'm sure it will go up over the course of the expansion. That's what I'll wait for before I buy any more now. Blizzard started promoting Mythic not Twitch streamers on the launch. Well, they have started. I mean, it's something that, you know, I always thought was a bit mad that Blizzard don't have much of a... They've never really had much of a relationship with like streamers and things like that. I've not seen it on mine, Battle.net. And they started doing it in the last year, haven't they? It's the sort of thing they should have been doing for years, really. People buying tokens so they could buy BOE gear? Maybe. At least you'd only have to buy one token, I suppose, to be able to get your dis off. Well, no, actually, the BOE epic gear, that would still work out. I mean, even stuff that's cost... I mean, some of the really good stuff was costing quite a lot. But let's say about 500,000 gold for a piece is still, you know, 30, 40 quid. I mean, bloody hell. I understand that some people will have that much money just to chuck around, especially if you just think of it as being the start of an expansion. It's something that happens every couple of years, sure, but, you know. The pre-BlizzCon video seemed a good idea. Give the ticket a bit more value for money. Oh, your work meetings got rescheduled. Oh dear, sorry. I'm supposed to have work meetings this year. I'm not sure what's up. But again, now I don't care. At the time when they were first announced, I thought to myself, oh shit. It's another hour when I can't be doing World of Warcraft stuff. But now I just don't care. I'll stay back an extra hour every now and then. No, I'm not bothered. And the traffic will be easier at least. Far more people right now are buying tokens to get gold. And fewer people buying tokens with gold. So, yeah, I mean, something like that, I suppose. But I don't think the auction house mount would be a significant factor in it, because that's just a mad number you would need. You still haven't set foot in Somerset in ESO. Oh, it's pretty. You should. It's nice. But WoW does take a while. I haven't played ESO in ages myself either. But... Oh, it says beta's just started an update. What's the bloody old point of that? I should probably remove that. Because as big as my primary SSD is, it still gets pretty full. It's a terabyte, but I've only got about 100 gigabyte free. And part of it is because I put the beta and the PTR on it. I should maybe remove the beta. Watching my video on the hints at potential faction changes. You hope the factions change to behave like the Aldor Scryer faction TBC. Oh, even that's divisive though, isn't it? Have you ever seen Jimmy's story? If you haven't seen Jimmy's story, which is a spoof WoW video from TBC time, you should watch that. Because I don't think that would solve... The problem is always that factions are antisocial. Now, obviously, when it comes to PvP, you need factions. That's understood. That's fine. But when it comes to anything PvE, like joining guilds or doing dungeons, raids, stuff like that, it forces you to make a choice between playing what you want to play and playing with your friends. And obviously, you're going to choose to play with your friends. So, yeah, the faction restrictions in PvE are just antisocial. And I don't understand why they were ever a thing. It's like mad that the idea that they're not in some games is a more modern idea. They never should have. I don't understand why anyone ever came up with an MMO that had this thing in place. Jimmy's played EverQuest, yeah. Where do I think Anduin's storyline is leading, if I had to guess? Well, it depends whether you mean in the short term or long term. In the long term, leading the army of the light, like Velen said. And but you know, short term, I don't know. I don't. I'm not sure. They're just at the moment giving him some chops so that he can be High King, aren't they? That's why they've established him in Before the Storm that he can be tough, even shouting at a werewolf to sit down and shut up. So I think that's what they're doing at the moment. But I don't think there's going to be a massive... There might be later on in the expansion. At the moment, there's no massive hints of serious alliance storyline in this expansion. Obviously, there's little things that could develop, but who knows when. You know, there's the Lich King, Bolvar, who's going to be cropping up at some point, you would imagine. But again, might not be this expansion, might be the next expansion. You know, people keep talking about Return of the Lich King because, of course, they've introduced Bolvar's daughter into it. But ultimately, that could be setting up for another expansion. Doesn't have to be this expansion. Don't really need to have predetermined factions for PvP. Well, it helps from a storyline point of view, I feel. You don't need it from a gameplay point of view. Hopefully Anduin becomes a king that presides over a military victory at some point. Well, they won the Siege of Lordaeron. Admittedly, he didn't necessarily cover himself in glory as a general because he went to assault a city that's full of blight, that makes blight, that is being run by a general who likes using blight. And he never thought to himself, should we maybe take something to protect us against the blight? And the fact that Gen didn't think of it either, and he's seen firsthand her use of the blight, that was a little bit embarrassing. If Jaina hadn't have shown up, yes, that would have been rather embarrassing. But he still won a military victory. All Sylvanas has done is set fire to a tree, because it could strongly be argued that the real victory of Northern Kalimdor was Saurfang. Because you notice in that whole scenario, Sylvanas, she had half the army. Fair enough, it's like a pincer movement. But she had the half of the army that stayed in Darkshore. And Saurfang was the one who somehow had to get across Felwood without her giving him any idea how he was going to do it. So I would say that was Saurfang's victory, really. You don't see anything dramatic happening at the end of BfA. Oh, I do. Oh, I do. In terms of faction stuff, I don't care. Well, I do care a bit. But I think that I see something very spectacular. Because I really do think they're going in a massively different direction with the story for next expansion. And the fact that they would have to announce it at next year's BlizzCon also gets me thinking that a lot of it will develop very rapidly over the course of BfA. Wonder if N'Zoth, what, you mean Ny'alotha? I think it'll just be a patch like Argus. Where again, do you know what I was thinking as well? Do you know how people got really annoyed with Argus because They'd only just introduced Pathfinder Part 2, so we could now fly, and then it's like, go to Argus where you can't fly. I can see the same thing happening in BfA. We get Pathfinder Part 2, and then it's like, all right, go to this new zone now. Oh, it's underwater. I can absolutely see it. Do I think that Blizzard are just putting out storylines for us lawcats to play with and pull on the ones? I think that's what they're trying to do. I absolutely think they're throwing out loads of strands so that we can't accurately predict what's going to happen. The problem is that they're not being clever enough with it, and that's why there's been these little things that don't make sense, and that's where I have a big issue with it. I absolutely believe that they're trying to do it. In fact, they even said they're trying to do it in that interview. But they're not being as clever as they think they are about it, and this is why they end up with situations where they put something in that's just either nonsensical or contradictory. The same writer said they forgot about the Vindicar weapon that was trying to have. Yeah. I mean, the problem with Warcraft as a storyline or a world is, on the one hand, it's like a lot of fantasy worlds. It's essentially swords and sorcery. It's a medieval world. But we've got spaceships with laser cannons. That's the problem. That's where it all falls down. So, and you have to separate, because it was like when I was talking about the fact, hang on a minute, if Jaina can pick up a ship and launch arcane barrages in a siege situation, how does a siege ever happen in the first place? Why didn't she just get the Alliance army onto these and get more ships, or one ship, doesn't matter, and plonk it over the fortifications of Lordaeron? And then someone else pointed out, quite rightly, well, why didn't they just blow the bloody thing up from space? In Loshak, no problem at all. Can I tell us the top 3 things? I don't ever hope anything will happen, but the 3 things I expect to happen. I expect that when Vol'jin's ashes are voodooed by the Zandalari, and they find Vol'jin's soul, whatever all that nonsense is about, I expect it to transpire that Sylvanas becoming war chief has been an old gods plot, but she's not in on it. I secondly expect Sylvanas, when she realises she's been played, to voluntarily realise the danger she poses to everyone and step back. And I don't expect Saurfang to take over. And what's the other thing I was expecting? Oh yeah, I expect all the old gods to be not a problem at the end of the expansion. I expect we'll be told that Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron are basically dead, even though the official lore up to now has always been, no, we've only defeated them. At the same time, it needs to be known, when Sargeras stabbed his sword into Silithus, which is where Cthulhu is, he didn't really yelp, right, or do anything. So if he's not dead, I want to know why he's not making a fuss about the fact he's got a sword stuck in his side. And Yogg-Saron, again, even though we were officially told that we only defeated, not killed, because, you know, how do you kill an old god with just poking it with a sword? I suspect that will be changed, and we will have actually defeated them properly. And there's only N'Zoth left, and we're going to deal with him as well. That's what I think. Anyway, where was I? You strongly suspect there will be water zones. So do I, but I hope there won't. But I strongly suspect as well. I find it difficult to believe that there won't be. Her magic siege spell is still on cooldown. I don't think it should be on. She's not like a player character, you see. They said that about Anduin. He's not a player character, he's special. So Jaina should be special as well and not need cooldowns on things. Because that's another question I had for myself. Do you know when I was watching that cinematic the Alliance cinematic where Lady Ashvane is assaulting the Kulturan Harbour and Jaina's there. Do you know what I was thinking? Why doesn't she pick up Ashvane's flagship, pick it up, turn it upside down and dump it back in the sea? And then just do that with each of the ships in turn. She doesn't need to summon a Kulturan fleet. You know, she can lift a bloody ship from the depths of the ocean. Not on the surface. She's done it from the depths of the ocean without significantly damaging it. Why couldn't she just pick the bloody thing up, upside down, bang? How'd you like that? Oh, you're still advancing. Right, I'll pick another one up. Maybe you'd like to turn round at this point. No? Right, I'll do it again. Bunsamdi and N'Zoth have some connection, maybe. It's possible. I'm not sure, though. I still think that Bunsamdi and N'Zoth would be at odds with each other, but it is possible that there is some collusion going on there. Well, you say underwater's fine as long as they increase swimming speed like they do in Stormheim. You do notice in Stormsong Valley and the northwest where you've got that Tortollan quest line and it gives you underwater breathing and swims and faster speed in the water only around that little area. Obviously, that's the sort of thing they can do on a larger area if they want. Her return in the Kulturan fleet was also a sign of hope for the Kulturan people. Fine, yeah, agree with that. But I would have also thought it was a pretty big sign of hope to have someone who could just pick up ships and dump them in the sea. I don't even know what the story is with Hakkar at the moment now. Is he dead? We killed him? Or has he just gone off? I don't know. I don't know. Whenever we kill something, a boss in World of Warcraft, especially when it's a spiritual type boss, I never really know what the official story is. I don't actually officially know what's happened to Hakkar. I mean, I suppose it's still about. Hi, Rob. I'm all right, thank you. Zappy Boy's dead! And I don't care whether it's the Shaman that Anduin killed. If Anduin didn't kill Zappy Boy, I did. At the end of the Siege of Lordaeron, he was nowhere to be seen, which means either Anduin killed him or I killed him. He's dead. I killed plenty of Shaman on my Alliance character. I probably killed a few on my Horde character as well. Suramar in the East also had underwater question, yes, but that was annoying. Hated that. He was being used by Jindo, was he? Well, I thought we'd just push Hakkar back as well, but I never know with these things. Well, that's the problem with it when it's something spiritual. It's always just an avatar, isn't it? It's always just an avatar. But he hasn't poked his head up since. Vanilla WoW also had underwater... Well, it had some underwater stuff. Yes, quests. The worst of which, of course, was the irony of the Druid's Deranged Seal quest, where you had to swim down, down, down to get this amulet and nearly drown yourself when the breathe bar was much shorter, went much quicker. And at the end of it, you got a quest reward, which allowed you underwater breathing. It was like, well, I could have done with that for the bloody quest. What's my favourite dungeon so far? Atul Dazar, quite frankly. I think it's called that. I'm probably getting... But, you know, the gold one, Templar Gold thing. I played that quite a lot on beta. I didn't mind playing that on beta quite a bit. Did Zappy remember to buy an Ankh? No, he didn't. He was dumb as fuck. Really was. He wasn't saved by Saurfang until he sees his corpse. His corpse is on fire. Just go to Lordaeron. So many blood gods. Yeah, well, that's the problem with so many lower as well. A lot of you know, crossover. It's like a huge Venn diagram, all the different lower and what they're supposed to be lower of. No, but Gahoon is not that. Gahoon is an artificial old god. That's what he is. He's a test subject. He's a lab rat that's got out of hand. What's more likely, Nazjatar rising out of the ocean for a new island, or us going down to face Azshara and N'Zoth? Well, we know we're going to face Azshara. She's in the, well, I can't say the next raid because the next raid is technically still Uldir. It's not Uldir, sorry, it's not out yet. But the raid after, well, or the Night's Hold-like raid has got Azshara in it. And N'Zoth, I think, will be at the end. He may not be a direct boss, but I think there'll be an encounter that is there for us to defeat N'Zoth. Which faction got the best zone story? I think the best zone story with the Alliance ones, but I think the best individual story was the Nazmir for Horde. So I think they got the best individual zone story, but collectively I think the Alliance ones were more interesting. I wasn't that impressed with the Zuldazar one, and I downright despised the Vol'dun one. I mean, they need some solid ground for the next expansion, you would think. So they need something to emerge somewhere. I'm not an enemy of Zappy Boy. I've got nothing against Zappy Boy. He's just dead, that's all. It's not my fault. Well, it is my fault he's dead because I killed him. But, you know, beyond that, he just happened, he got himself involved in a battle that he wasn't up to. You'd like at least one phase of the Azshara fight to be underwater. You may well get your wish, because the thing is that Azshara, very noticeably, has a load of tentacles on her undercarriage. You know, they're not going to be that great for scuttling across dry land. So I think it is very likely that there is going to be... Now, people have pointed out she could be like Helya, where she's in the water and we're not. Okay, that's possible too. But she looks a bit mobile. The model of her looks like it's a bit mobile. So I strongly suspect that there will be a water element to it. It's nothing to do with the fact that they're short. It's because they're pathetic. There's plenty of short races. I have nothing wrong. You would never call dwarves pathetic, but they're short. Didn't they want to do that in Cata? Do what? Sorry. There's an underwater raid. Yes, well, so I gather. I don't know whether it's true or not. I imagine they wanted to do an awful... They could have done an awful lot more in Cataclysm if they hadn't wasted all their time ruining the 1 to 60 content. Still waiting for Naga to be playable. It's... Look, I mean, I know a lot of Horde racers can't wear shoes anyway, but Naga can't even wear trousers. They won't be able to wear pants or shoes. Those will be two pieces of equipment that will be completely superfluous to them. The transmog is just going to be awful. Abyssal Maw. Skirts, yeah, but not everything's a skirt. Have I gotten revered with Champions of Azeroth yet? Good God, no, I'm only just honoured. I really don't see an underwater raid. I can see part of a fight. I mean, technically we've already had one, because Kel'Thas, for a couple of the phase 4 and 5, you were effectively swimming. It was in the air, but it was like you were basically swimming. Do I think Rathian was used improperly? Yes, absolutely. I think it's a nonsense the way they keep picking up a character, using it, and then dropping it without any thought for what it's doing while it's not being used. Rathian absolutely should have been involved in the defeat of the Legion. It's madness that he wasn't. Absolutely ridiculous. Wearing pants is weird. Not really that weird. Although, for all you know, I'm not wearing pants. Occasionally I'm not when I'm raiding. When it's too hot. But it's not too hot at the moment, so it's fine. There's no point in having Naga race as a playable thing. Forest trolls. Couldn't you just have a cosmetic option for that? Will we see? Well, will we see the return of Neptune? We might. You know, water. You would think he'd be about somewhere, but we might not. Again, I don't really think that when they're doing a story, do they ever think, right, major characters in the game, what would their involvement likely be? I think they have a storyline in mind, and they then think, right, who should be the driver of this bit of the story, and then get a character who will fit the bill. I don't ever think that they think about the motivation of all the characters in the game and whether or not they are likely to get involved. So whether Noctulan appears or not will be just down to whether or not they feel there's a bit of story that would suit him. If I could choose any race in WoW to join my faction, well, what's my faction? What is my faction? I assume you mean a currently non-playable race. In which case, my heart says Murlocs, but my brain says shut up, heart, because that's a stupid idea. I wouldn't mind, I know I was taking the piss with it a while ago, I wouldn't actually mind Hosen being a playable race. That would work. I'd be okay with that. I wouldn't want to play it myself, but I'd be okay with it being a playable race. Did the class hall stories even matter though? Well, not now that we're at war. The class hall stories were all about Alliance and Horde coming together, and BfA is all about, oh no, we're not friends anymore. Oh. When you think of WoW as a D&D campaign instead of a book, the writing makes so much sense. Yeah, but a D&D campaign, you forgive it a bit because people make shit up on the fly. You know, you're supposed to think about these things in WoW. The Hosen for Horde and Jinyu for Ally. But Jinyu are also a pathetic race. And they're a tall race, so it's not shortest. They're pathetic. Don't need more pathetic races. Zandalari and Kulturans be 8. Not necessarily. They may not be in 8.1 at all. I think that they'll be in when they think there'll be a lull in subscriptions. I see allied races as something to get people playing the game again. And that's it. I think it's... Otherwise, they'd have done them as sub-races. There was no need. The allied race concept isn't needed. They could have done them as sub-race options. I think the reason they've done them is to get people hyped and coming back to the game when there's maybe a bit of a lull. So I don't know it would be as early as 8.1. I mean, it might be, but I think it might be one of those they'd hold until they think there's a bit of a gap in the schedule there. Because it worked a treat when they brought them out in January, the first few, or if you advanced ordered. Absolute treat. Loads of people did that. What if one of those patches were with the Worgen and Goblin update? I don't think Worgen and Goblins are going to get an update this expansion. You know what they said? They said it's on the list, but it's a long list, and they're quite near the bottom. Why are the Jinyu pathetic? Why? Because they got corralled into a little pond. They didn't... and we had to do their fighting for them. At least Hosen chucked some shit about. Do I think the class hall is the new Rathian? Rathian was about defeating the Legion. Class wars were about not going to war with each other. Well, they were about uniting to fight the thing that was trying to destroy the whole of Azeroth. But we've still got an existential threat to Azeroth. Bloody swords stuck in her. And old gods, you know, causing trouble. And yet it's all blown to hell. So if that's the purpose of the class wars, then it failed miserably. Tuskar, well, Tuskar is at least possible, I suppose. They've sort of got feet, I guess. I can't really imagine running. In vanilla, when I first started to make some outs just to try some different races out, I remember making a dwarf and running up the slope to Ironforge, and from behind I just thought it was comical because they've got no knees effectively, and they have sort of, because they do the thingy dance, the Cossack dance, but from behind it just looked comical, like penguins, and I can't imagine what a Tuskar would look like running from behind. You can't mark allied races heritage armor. Well, no, there's that. Even the heritage armor is just there to encourage, or I think it's more for an encouragement for casual players, but it works for some other players as well. Just to get you to level all the way from, I suppose, 20. It's there. It's a time sink. It's there as a time sink. Which major characters on both seeds can I see dying? I think there's a lot of characters that are not untouchable. I think Anduin's untouchable. Sylvanas is untouchable. Saurfang is not. He could die. Gen could die. I don't think Bane can, because there isn't... I mean, he's not, you know, exactly a rousing leader, but there isn't really anyone else, is there? They can't kill Gammon, because he's always killing him. There's a lot that... I mean, the Goblin... I guess the Goblin... Most of the individual alliance leaders, I think, are fairly untouchable. Gen probably isn't. You could probably kill Gen. You could absolutely kill Saurfang. Jaina could be killed. Jaina's not untouchable. Do you know what they could do as well? This would be awful, but they could. You know, basically, they could have, and not necessarily this expansion, Anduin and Talia and get married, have a family, have a kid, and then Talia could get killed off. And then it'd be just like all over again, wouldn't it? Where Anduin had to grow up without his mother. Well, he did a fair amount of growing up without his father as well, but, you know, he was at least alive. As the game will swirl now that the old god like Saurfang should die. Well, they talked about that in that interview. They specifically said that Saurfang and Sylvanas represent the old Horde and that we're getting ready to move to the new Horde. So that pretty much is their way of saying that Saurfang and Sylvanas are not going to be the leaders of the Horde, presumably next expansion. Bane will probably die to make Anduin go out shit. Yeah, but who's going to replace Bane? Usually they need to build someone else up, don't they? Zappy Boy's dead. If they wanted a dead troll as a war chief, they could have just left Vol'jin on the throne, instead of burning him. You can keep the old guard, but have new people to bring about different change. No, I don't think either of them are going to be members of the Horde after this expansion. May as well have a blood elf in charge. The thing is, though, I mean, as surprising as it was for Sylvanas to be put in charge, like the blood elves and the goblins are not really invested in the Horde in any serious sense. So I don't really see the leaders of either of them becoming war chief. They'd never met the goblin war chief, obviously that'd be ridiculous. But even, what's his name? The blood elf guy. Can't remember his name now. I just don't see them as being that. He's not going to live in a tent in the middle of a desert. I mean, I suppose he spends a lot of time there, but still. No, I don't see it. Many Alliance Warcraft 3 characters are dead. Well, good riddance. They should kill them all off. Because they keep coming back and reusing Warcraft 3 stories. Your friend has been saying that Nathanos was... Yeah, I think Nathanos was Forsaken leader. I think it absolutely makes sense. What I think will happen with Forsaken... So Sylvanas will voluntarily step down when she sees she's been played. Nathanos will take over. Because Nathanos strikes me as being like Sylvanas used to be. So I think he will take over. I think part of the Forsaken will split and join the Alliance. And that will be headed up by Kalia. That's how I think the Forsaken's going to go. Ah, Lorthamar, thank you, yes. So no, I don't see him ever becoming War Chief. I don't think he would want to. Lorthamar strikes me as being someone who has a job that he doesn't really want. So he'll never really go for promotion because he doesn't really like the company in the first place. It just pays the bills. You trade a Sylvanas redemption story for an Azshara redemption. Azshara, no, and I don't think we can ever get it. I think that Warbringers, I was quite pleased with it. It basically set out Azshara as being totally conceited. There is no redemption of her. She has no redeeming features, that character. Sylvanas does. Maybe the Horde will be run by a council and not one leader. Well, that'll be good, won't it? That'll be excellent. Nothing will ever happen again then, will it? Imagine trying to get a council of any group of people to agree, much less the Horde leaders. It might indeed be the new Horde dropping the single leader, but then nothing will ever be decided, will it? How about we kill a few Alliance leaders for the sake of balanced storytelling? They can do. I mean, Gen could go. You know. Maybe someone will actually kill Malfurion, and then Tyrande can go full psycho. Or maybe Tyrande will get killed off and she can just shut up. Chandrila get remixed into an allied race for Tyrande to recruit. Well, she doesn't need to. She's got a night. She hasn't even got a home for a night elf. She can't really afford to recruit another race. It's like, come and join me. Where we're going to live, don't know. In a tree somewhere. You're interested in Lillian Voss being waiting for her story to be developed. Just because she's in BfA doesn't mean to say they'll develop it. They may do, they may not. They do sometimes just plonk characters in and don't do anything with them. Do I think the Alliance will invade Silvermoon? No. No. Silvermoon is totally separate as a zone. They never integrated it with the others. Can we have Malfurion die every what? Like in South Park? Oh my god, they killed Malfurion. You bastard, you killed Shando. Every patch, some quest line where he ends up dead, but then he's back again the next one. Yeah, well, Malfurion is also fairly pathetic, really, when you think about it. An awful lot of pathetic characters about. They could all be killed off as far as I'm concerned. What do I think about so many allies being turned into Forsaken before the storm? Is that the smoking gun for faction changes? Yes. Well, yes, I think it could be, yeah. Because at first I was thinking it's a trigger for Forsaken becoming an... or a form of Forsaken becoming an allied race for the Alliance. But with recent developments, There's a couple of things making me move away from that. One, of course, Blizzard said that they don't want loads and loads of allied races, and we're already getting 8. And 2, the fact that they've started to talk about putting, at least changing the Horde into a completely new direction and all the rest of it is, yeah, it's just making me think now that they're just providing the groundwork for races being able to be either Horde or Alliance. At the same time, I'm still hoping that also means a breakdown of the faction thing for gameplay reasons as well. What do I think will happen to Bolvar? I have no idea. Nathanos takes his place. No. I am interested there. Or as much as I hate them keep bringing bloody villains back, and I don't know that we'd necessarily call Bolvar as Lich King a villain just yet. Although he did do naughty things in Legion. He was a bit naughty. Attacking my Paladin Order Hall. Not nice. But I am interested in that one. I'll let them have that one. They shouldn't have brought back anyone else. But Lich King is interesting enough. You don't imagine he would be okay with attempting to raise Tyrion as a Death Knight. Well, that's what I thought as well, indeed. But we'll have to see. Are Sylvanas and Nathanos? No, Nathanos isn't a Banshee, but... No, I think they just retain their features just because they're special. Like, Sylvanas didn't look like that in Warcraft 3. She was a full-on Banshee. Like the sort you see in Diamol. Would instantly solve the Horde bias with endgame raiding if they did that with PvE being free with races. It wouldn't solve it still, because you've still now got... It doesn't matter what they do with racials. Like, some people think a lot of the Alliance racials at the moment are a bit stronger. The issue is that the Horde of so massive a pool of players that it's still quite hard to recruit on the Alliance side, and you're not going to stop that unless there's a slow migration that balances it out. Whereas if they break down those barriers completely, then it makes no difference who plays more, whether it's Alliance or Horde or a mixture of both. Will we ever lose a raid fight? We do every time we wipe. But it's not official. So no. James Bond can't resurrect back up though, so only gets one shot at it. Any chance of another Cata level revamp of vanilla content? No. I think they massively regret doing that, even though they still approve of their direction with it. I think they massively regret the resources used to do it. I don't think they'll do it again. And it does mess the timeline, but it's a complete nonsense to me. I don't get it. Yeah, it does completely screw up the timeline. It's ridiculous. What do you think Brun Samdi referred to when he said his boss won't be happy? Not sure. I think there are interesting aspects to storylines in BfA that we'll find out about. Because there isn't any clues for that yet. They're just saying little cryptic things for which there are no real clues to... You can guess, but you can't really know. Blizzard stats released on their Facebook page said that dungeon and raid bosses killed players over 2 billion times. Yeah. How much more Azeroth is there? Don't know. Like, again, it's all been retconned. For all we know, what we see is half of Azeroth on the world map. And there's a load of stuff on the other side. What I would like to know is, given that not only have we got advanced navigation, but bloody spaceships, if there's stuff on the other side, how come no one said anything? Of course, in Wrath of the Lich King, as far as we were concerned, because in Ulduar and things like that, you had globes of Azeroth spinning round. But we haven't really seen one lately, and apparently Blizzard have said that may not be true anymore. So they could make a giant continent that we've never seen before, but there'd better be a bloody good explanation for why we haven't seen it. Piecemeal revamps like Warfronts and War of Thrones. Yeah, that's possible that you slowly change things bit by bit over a period of a few years. Yeah, they could do that. There's nothing on the other side. Well, what I would take from it is there is no other side. You know, the western shore of Kalimdor, maybe there's a bit of an expansive sea before you get to the eastern shore of the Eastern Kingdoms. But yeah, there shouldn't be really a lot in it. The world map should just be the globe flattened out. Did they in Legion? I don't remember. Whereabouts did they in Legion? Any Mythic Zero horror stories? There was no real horror stories. There was just some lunacy in it, for which I didn't have time in the end to go through and do a bleeper reel of it. But Magic explains everything in these games. Well, quite. A wizard did it, exactly. That's why there's no point in picking fault with physicsy or like sciencey based things, because someone will just say a wizard did it. Like when people complain that the catapult Sylvanas used to burn Teldrassil had zero chance of making that range, and even if it did, zero chance of actually setting fire to that tree. Doesn't matter because a wizard did it. When we met with Magni. Oh, right, okay. Take your word for it then. I wasn't paying attention in that case. But I am curious to see what they will fish up. They can't just fish up some random island. I mean, in theory, there could be any number of islands that have not been significant enough in the story before that are still there. That's perfectly feasible. But I don't really see us, for the next few expansion, just going to another group of islands. It would get a little bit tired. What I would like to see, and I mean genuinely like to see, when they redid the 1-60 content in Cataclysm, I wish they hadn't have done that. What I wish they'd have done instead is they can redo zones and update zones, but only for that level. So maybe what we can do is you can use zones that already exist and have already been explored, but a level 130 version of them for the next expansion, where again you can use a dragon to go back in time to the original version. So you don't replace a zone, you just create a more updated zone for the timeline. And then you can keep reusing zones then, you build on them. You know, they could absolutely do that. Tolkien did reduce the excessive magic, yes. He didn't even allow his wizards to do much. You've always thought the shown world of Azeroth is way smaller than lore. I don't know. Yeah, but in an MMO, you're supposed to be able to cover large distances quite quickly. I mean, it's not... Realistically, they are supposed to be larger than they are actually in-game. That's the nature of any MMO. Gnomes still can't reclaim their own capital city. Well, quite exactly. They're useless. You would like to see an in-game defecting quest to switch from Horde to Alliance, as long as it doesn't cost you money. Otherwise, it's just a faction transfer where you get to have a particular race. Do we need new land every expansion? Well, no, that's what I mean, Fraser. You could add another layer onto a zone that already exists as an updated form of it. Do I think WoW will have a level cap? What do you mean by that? Do you mean stop giving out new levels with the expansions? In which case, no, I think that's one of their things. I wish it weren't. I think it's annoying. But it's one of their things that they like to say when they're announcing a new expansion. Oh, get a load more levels. 10 more levels. So I think one of the main things that is always going to be there, they'll always have the basic combat system that they have. They'll always have this system of DPS, tank and healer. They'll always have, you know, professions working basically the way they work. And the way that, and adding extra levels with each expansion is also something they're always going to do. They're wasting zone by zone revamp via Warfront instead of having a whole somewhat sensible faction war across the entire planet. Well, there's lots of things they could do. They've got the technology to do all sorts of things with zones now and have them change seamlessly to be updated. And maybe that is a plan for the next expansion. I don't know. You think they keep the level cap because people buy tokens now to avoid the long grind? But then they put things in the game to get them to do the long grind, don't they? No, WoW isn't like ESO. As I say, for a casual, ESO is way better. I think as a more serious player, I think WoW is better. Could Blizzard successfully implement a third faction? No. No. Because people, you'd be splitting people up or forcing them to not play. And there's also no need for it. The benefits of a third faction have disappeared from the game. They were there years ago. They're not there anymore. There is no benefit in a third faction. And all it does is cause pressure on splitting up friendship groups. They need to dissolve factions. Have them only be in the storyline and for PvP purposes. Can't wait for the old gods to be finished. Miss the Vulperian, no. Will the Infinite Dragonflight return as well? Only if it transpires that the Infinite Dragonflight was Jaina's doing now. Because obviously if you think about the early bits of it, it's the sort of things that Jaina might have meddled in. Because obviously if the Horde never arrived, she would never have been put in the position where her father had to die. If Thrall never escapes, then again that sequence of events would never have happened, and so on and so on. We've yet to have a gnome-themed expansion. Of course not, it'd be ridiculous. They don't even put them in the cinematics. They put them in the cutscenes now, which is also beyond the pale. They've never even been in a cinematic. It's ridiculous. The cinematics are there to be epic. Of course they're not going to put a gnome in them. Could the Dark Irons be a shine of more shady races in the Alliance? What do you mean shady? The Dark Irons are now the new good guys, really, in the Alliance. I mean, they might have worshipped some unsavoury types, but we've killed those now. Legion invasions. And the beta invasions happened in older zones as well. Well, the invasions happened in the pre-Legion patch. No high elf allied race. Yeah, but they see the Blizzard have said that there aren't enough of what would still identify as high elves. They're either blood elves or, I suppose, void elves now. With a few that you would still identify as high elves, but not many of them. Slightly sinister aesthetic. Well, they used to be, and then it turned out that we were the bad guys when we killed what's his face in Blackrock Depths, because we thought he'd kidnapped Moira, and it turns out he hadn't at all. So we were actually sent in as a murderer. We didn't realise it. Shame how they belittle gnomes. Is that a pun? By not putting them in cinematics, yes. It's not strange at all. You couldn't sensibly put them in a cinematic. The cinematics, remember, are not just there for us to go ooh and ah about. They're there for, like, advertising purposes to get people to play the game. They're never going to do that if, like I say, a pink-haired, mustachioed midget comes into view. Oh, Ironfo, I got that. Yeah, I sometimes use that to transmog. You always get notification of my stream very late. I get notification of my stream immediately. And I'm not even subscribed to myself. Not allowed. Do I think we'll ever see Dragon Hours? I have no idea. All I do hope, as I say, is that they don't just do a new group of islands for every expansion, because that's just rubbish. I don't think they will. I think they will know that's rubbish. What might happen to the Naga after Azshara? No one says we're going to kill Azshara. We don't know that we're going to kill Azshara. We just know that we're going to probably defeat her. Can the Naga be cured like they say to in the Ashen Vale quest? Who knows? The question is, would they want to be cured? But it might be a bit strange if Azshara, who they kept dangling Azshara to get people to go, ooh, Azshara coming in, Azshara coming in. Be a bit strange for her to finally appear in the game and then we immediately kill her off. I mean, we might do. But equally, we might just scupper her plans. Or maybe we don't. Goes back to that comment before, will we ever lose a raid fight? Maybe we will. Maybe there'll be a raid encounter where she's summoning N'Zoth something like another Herald or something, replacement for Mithrax. Well, Mithrax was Herald of Gahun, technically. Something for N'Zoth. And we defeat her, but the summoning still happens anyway, and that leads into the next one. No, I would forget all about Azshara Redemptions. I hope they don't do that. That would be god-awful. She's unpleasant as a character. She's not like some characters that went down a dark path because they sort of got, by circumstances, bundled into it. She's always been greedy and self-centered. So, I don't put anything past Blizzard, but I do not believe that Azshara should get a redemption story, because I don't think, you know, like as I say, there are no redeeming features to her in the same way that there are for other characters. You just hope they don't make Azshara another cooldown and we see her in the next expansion. We might do. Azshara came off as more likeable than Sylvanas. How? She's the most deeply unpleasant character. She's worse than Tyrande. You'd like to see a Naaru what? Azshara Naaru. I mean, that would be possible. Again, it might link in with a Return of the Lich King type thing, which they'd better not call it that. But if there were a Return of the Lich King expansion next, then of course an Azshara Naaru proper zone would work with that. Yes, Azshara is consistent. That's what I mean. That's what I meant about I quite liked that Warbringers video. I had nothing really to complain about in it because it was totally consistent with what we... How is that? Dodgy comment. It was totally consistent with what's gone before it. No retconning required. They will return to Undead at some point. It doesn't need to be on... No, it doesn't need to be on Northrend, indeed. But at the same time, it could be. They just overlay a more modern Northrend. Problem with elves, they live for thousands of years, and every expansion they get more crazy and annoying. Tyrande was always crazy and annoying. In any other scenario, if it weren't for the fact that the Alliance are always the goody two-shoes, people say, Tyrande would be the most heinous villain. She's awful. She's murdered her own people, and not for any great gain, just because she wanted Illidan released. Malfurion said no. She said, shut up, Malfurion. And she went to release them. The Warden said no. She killed them. Yes, she was. Okay, well, that's for the cinematic purposes. Yes, technically, she was conducting a summon, like a ritual when it happened. Yeah, all right. They changed. But in terms of her character, the Warbringer story, nothing really changed. You know, you can argue something like this is a bit of artistic license. But indeed, she was inside. She was conducting a ritual with her closest sycophants. We never actually saw any Naga that aren't from their military forces. Well, maybe the ones that weren't were not considered suitable. You still wish Blizz would continue the return of the Highborn story from Cato, yeah. Well, there's so many. As I say, this is the problem with them. They do a story, and then when they've done, or when it served its purpose, they stop it, even if it's not a natural pause to the whole thing. How about entire zones floating in the clouds? No. Don't need Cloud City. I don't even know how that would make sense either, because we would have seen those too. But anyway, underwater says, no, I hope not. Underwater is a big risk in BfA. It's a big fear of mine that there will be a substantial amount of underwater activity. It's almost inevitable. But I just hope against hope it won't happen. But I'm going to finish it there because we've got to 9 o'clock there. And I need to get some stuff ready for work tomorrow. So thanks for coming on, everyone. Air combat, no. When am I on? Oh, I'm going to be streaming tomorrow, but I'll be on Twitch. I'll do some world quests, get my arse into combat again. And thanks for coming on, everyone. Have a good night, all. Let's just have a look at this really last quick one. If Azeroth is a Titan, well, she's a Titan wheel soul, she hasn't hatched yet, and the Titan suddenly becomes alive, where will we all go? Well, this is it. We don't know. Last little thing on this is we don't know. We don't know whether the planet itself ceases to be because it's a cracked eggshell, or if the world soul just sort of leaks out and coalesces in space and the world is still there. Who knows? Maybe Blizzard don't even know. But we don't know. So, yeah, good night, everyone, and I will see you later.